All right, good morning. I'm Amy Snyder from the Connect and Communicate Series Planning Committee. Thank you all for joining us today. Also, thank you to Erin for handling the recording of today's session. If you're just joining us, closed captioning is unfortunately not available today, but we will be uploading this video to YouTube afterwards, so you'll be able to take advantage of the captioning there. Going along with that, our presentation will be recorded and made available on the College and Research Division blog and sent to those who registered. This session is brought to you by the College and Research Division Board, and I'd like to thank the CRD Board for supporting the Connect and Communication Initiative. Our panelists today, Scott Meneely and Patty Petronella. Also, Sean Saccone will be speaking about accessibility, awareness, and technologies in the library. During the presentation, feel free to add questions to the chat box. They said they'd be happy to take questions as you think of them. And after the presentation, we'll open it up to even more questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters.
Okay, so first we're going to turn the mic over to Dawn, who is our outreach person here. I think some of the folks from throughout the state might know him because he's been all over. So Dawn's just going to tell you about the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped and what we do in general.
Hello. Now, the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, even though we're located in the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, we're actually part of a network of libraries under the National Library Service of the Library of Congress. So the services that we provide are available to every state and territory in the Union, but we are mandated to supply it to the residents of Pennsylvania through Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. But as such, we work for all of you, just as we do for people in our local county here. That's why we're concerned very much to make sure that everyone who is serving people with different needs is aware of what we have and what we're going to talk about today beyond our basic services, all the technologies that everyone can bring to bear at your own location. So our basic services are digital audiobooks and downloads. We also have large print books and other technologies to link people up with digital sources. And we have programming here within our library that we also take around our local counties. The books are distributed through the mail. Free matter for the blind and physically handicapped covers the postage. So everything that we serve is free. The digital audiobook players and downloads, the digital audiobooks are distributed just as any other library material would be. But there's no postage necessary. This is just meant to take the place of public library service for people who have a visual disability, and it doesn't have to be blindness, anything that prevents you from easily reading standard print, or a physical disability with your hands, such as could be Parkinson's disease or stroke, something like multiple sclerosis that makes it difficult, even arthritis, that to hold a book or to turn pages is difficult. We also serve people with reading disabilities. So something like dyslexia, where people learn or gather information audially better than visually, they are also eligible. We have a process by which people sign up for this service. It's an application form. It just has to be certified by someone. A librarian, a healthcare professional, social worker, quite a number of professionals in their professional capacity can sign people up for the service if it's a visual or a physical disability. If a person has a reading disability, it does have to be certified by a physician or an osteopath. But there are a lot of ways that, for instance, we can also sign all of you up as an institution, as a library, so that you can have our equipment and our downloads available not only for use to demonstrate to patrons, but also for in-house programming. We find that in children's services and things like that, there are a lot of things that we have that we'll talk about. But those are the basic services, and now that Patty and Scott will be talking about a lot of the technologies that we are just starting to introduce and to integrate into our service in a more efficient way. The ultimate goal, of course, is with assistive technologies, it's not only to allow people to take advantage of services that are essential to them, free public library services, but it's also breaking down the walls. There's going to be a time when there will not have to be a library for the blind and physically handicapped. All of you in your own locations will be able to download audiobooks and assist patrons so that they do join you back as one of your local patrons. We want them to have a local library to work with, so someday we'll just fade into the background and you'll be serving folks directly. So that's why right now, to introduce you to some of these technologies, I hope will encourage you to participate and bring these into your own programming and also to demonstrate to your patrons. Because you will be seeing, and you always do, people who have difficulty, or they may have used all the large print that they can in your area, or they also have not been able to participate in programming, which you can now make accessible to them. So that is the background, and any questions you have throughout this discussion, I'd be happy to elucidate. I have been here for a very long time, so there are a lot of things that I know, 34 years. So. But Patty and Scott are very knowledgeable about all these technologies, and which I could never have even touched. So that's the end of my part of it. I'll just turn that over.
And just to elaborate on something Dawn said, Dawn mentioned that we can sign your libraries up as institutional members here, and we'll send you all of our materials. You all have the power to sign up your patrons for our service as well. As any librarian is authorized as somebody to certify that somebody needs our services. So any of those patrons that you do have in mind that, you know, sit very close to the computer screen or they can't get out of their house much anymore due to any physical limitations, you can be the person that signs off on their application.
Don, we did have a question. Someone had asked an academic library who can use the services for students who are can an academic library use your services for students who are not Pennsylvania residents but are attending school here?
Yes, we can, as long as they have an address in Pennsylvania to which we can send the materials, or if it's a download, just an email address that we can send the instructions and the password so they can download it. Yeah, resident of Pennsylvania doesn't have to be a permanent resident. And it is also, I'm glad you brought up the idea of the kinds of libraries that you're talking about. That I have done outreach to different locations where there were people on site who did have a lot of students, whether they have visual or physical disabilities, but a lot of them had reading disabilities. And they were, the librarians and the teachers were not aware that if a person, for instance, has dyslexia, that while they're using our books, whether as downloads or as physical medium distribution, they can slow down the speed of it so they can actually match up the visual aspect of reading the words on a page with the sound. So over time, comprehension can increase when they learn to recognize the physical form of the word without having to sound it out in phonetics. So that's, we're very anxious that the school libraries and educational locations do use that. So yes, that was a long answer, but I forgot to mention about how we're hoping to get into educational institutions and research libraries. So.
And we do help students too. We do talk to students and answer reference questions for them and try to get them materials in the same way that we do for any of our users.
Thank you.
Okay, so the slide up there now has a definition of what assistive tech is, but assistive tech is a very broad term. It can be anything that helps a person remove a barrier or function easier. A wheelchair ramp is an example of assistive technology. The assistive technology that we deal with on a daily basis is highly biased towards visually impaired people because the main users that we interact with do have a visual impairment, but there is all kinds of assistive tech, things like TTY telephone service and things like that for deaf individuals, or closed captioning, as we had talked about earlier. It's a wide array. Some of it's very high tech, some of it's very low tech, and the low tech stuff I wouldn't discount because a lot of that is incredibly liberating the same way that high tech stuff is.
It's pretty much any kind of technology that can help people who have different disabilities be more independent as they kind of move through their daily tasks and make them a little bit more accessible.
There's an anecdote that it applies to all technologies, but I think it's illustrative because it's a low technology, where a librarian had said, why do I need a ramp? We never get any wheelchair users in here. So you can see where, the chicken or the egg thing. So we can use that same thought with all of the technologies, that if you build it, they will come. If you make your programming and your materials accessible, you will start to see people use them who never really were part of your clientele.
So some of the different things that our users interact with for assistive tech is reading text. So that can just be just like our player or different downloads that we have for iPhones and tablets.
We're going to show you our player in a little while, and we'll show all of this technology in a little while. But our player that we send out to people was made for specifically with folks with limitations in mind.
Yeah, and these are kind of some of the things that we interact with in a variety of ways in some of the general categories. But things like navigation, so there's different apps that people who are visually impaired can use to help them navigate down a street in an airport. There's different special devices that people can use, like a refreshable braille display, which we'll also show you guys. Then we have our tech training, which we do one-on-ones. Scott and I are the tech trainers here, and then we also have classes that people come to. We do brailing jobs that are less than 5 pages, and we do everything from restaurant menus. We did someone's insurance card once. We'll do agendas and minutes for different programs or presentations. And then if we can't answer a question or if we can't provide a resource of some kind, we find that resource for a patron, whether it's an agency of some kind, a phone number, a name, anything that we can find, we try and assist them with.
Yeah, some of the things we're going to talk about today are very costly, and we can refer people to other agencies that can, at least for working age folks, can alleviate some of those costs.
Yeah, we try and find ones that are both either like, well, this is a bit more higher tech, but it costs more, and then here's a free service that you can kind of use as well.
And just to mention, with our tech training, we do that in person here, but we also do it over the phone. So if with those academic libraries that are in other places that aren't Pittsburgh, if you have students that want to learn more about assistive technology or that need to learn how to do it, we do it over the phone. Sometimes it's difficult to do it over the phone, and it presents unique challenges, but we do tech training over the phone. Yeah,
it's always a good learning experience.
Okay, so some of the common assistive devices that we use are phones of all kinds, which some of our users use flip phones, and they do have accessible features on them. Tablets, laptops, and PCs. All of these things have software to enable visually impaired and other impaired users to interact with them. We use refreshable braille, and there's keyboards, there's small pads for refreshable braille that people can use. Different kinds of magnifiers, everything from the magnifier that's in the junk drawer at your house, all the way up to like very high tech ones. An iPad camera has an accessibility magnifier on it, built in. We also have like a closed circuit television magnifier here that a lot of people use to do a lot of tasks that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. We can sign people up here for currency readers. They come from the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, moneyfactory.org, but they're free of charge, and they help people identify what kind of bills they have in their wallet or what kind of bills. So when they're paying accurately, and they know what they have. And you can imagine the confusion or what would happen if somebody didn't know what kind of bill they had. Our audiobook player, which again was designed for people, it has very large buttons. They're different shapes so people can feel them. It has braille on it, and it's very easy to handle. Also braille printers and input and output. We mentioned that we do braille jobs for the community here. We can do them for our patrons throughout the state too if they need something. I think our limit is 5 pages, but we can print those jobs and send them through the mail for free. And we also we don't have a partnership with them, but we refer people for audio Bibles to Aurora Ministries. They have audio Bibles in different formats. They can send them to fit in our player from the National Library Service, but they also have like self-contained little audio Bibles that people can take with them. So that's just a good resource, because that's a lot of times when people sign up for our service, they might not necessarily be a reader who's interested in literature or even popular works. They just want their Bible. Yeah. So we end up referring a lot of people to Aurora Ministries.
And things like the magnifiers, the currency readers, and the audio Bibles, they're not things that we necessarily can have here in-house to provide, but we provide the information and the means to get those kinds of devices for our patrons. And for brailing, we also braille all of our DVDs. So all of our DVD covers are brailled, and we've also brailled a bunch of children's books, I think 100 plus now, for parents and caregivers to be able to read with their child. Like, let's say that there's a grandparent that went through with their kid or their grandkids, the grandparent can read along, like using the braille, and the kid can actually see the pictures and read with them. So we have kind of that.
And that's also very important for early literacy development for visually impaired people, the same way that children who are sighted experience text before they can read it. They see the letters, they're curious about what it means. It's the same thing. Children who are visually impaired need to interact with text to develop those early literacy skills that come before they're able to read.
Yeah. So these are some of the navigation apps that are being developed. There are still, so things like BlindSquare and NavCog, those are still kind of in their beta modes, but they have a lot of promise, and even NavCog has been made available at the Pittsburgh International Airport.
And we do have videos on here in the documents that we're sending out, so please link through them later on your own. They're really impressive and amazing.
Yeah.
But we don't, for time's sake, we're not going to click on them here.
And so for we have an advisory group that meets every month here that deals with all of our patrons. And it's a group of our patrons, and they are constantly testing these different apps in the city, because a lot goes through CMU. So BlindSquare and NavCog, a lot of our patrons have personally tested and are very brutally honest about the use of them and how good they are, which is why they might be still in their beta state. And then you have things like Be My Eyes or IRA, which is not listed here, but Be My Eyes is a way for people to get connected with volunteers to help them pick out clothes, or maybe they're trying to figure out which cans of foods they have. It's an app that you download, and you can just click on it, and a volunteer will pop up and be like, hey, what can I help you with? And IRA is similar, but it comes with glasses. And this is IRA you do have to pay for, but it has a camera attached to the glasses, and then you can connect yourself with a trained agent to kind of help you navigate the airport, navigate maybe a new city that you're not familiar with, identify products, basically anything you need them for. And you can kind of stay connected with that same agent, which is nice, because the consistency is really also kind of a positive way for people to be a bit more independent, because they always have this one person that they can contact.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think we've all found ourselves in an airport that we're unfamiliar with and had to get from one side to the other side.
Yeah.
You know, with our site, if you could imagine getting to an airport and not being able to read the signs and see where the gates are and having to rely on other people, having something like NavCog, which works through headphones to tell people where to go. And you'll see it if you do watch the video later. It'll say, like, turn right in 330 steps, or there are restrooms on your left. You know, having that can be incredibly freeing and help somebody feel much more independent and help them get from just one gate to the other, period. Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of different reading technology, and it's for different kinds of reading. One of the main ones, the screen readers, aren't for reading books necessarily. They're just for interacting with technology and reading what's on a screen. The software varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. For Apple, it's called VoiceOver, and Apple is kind of the industry standard. Everybody, not everybody, but most of the people that we work with, when they want a smartphone, they want an Apple because of the accessibility features and because VoiceOver is so good. VoiceOver reads what's on the screen and provides an interface through different gestures to interact with what's on the screen. And the other softwares do pretty much the same thing in different ways. Android's is called TalkBack. Microsoft has some included accessibility features. Their screen reader is called Narrator, but it's not very good. You know, anytime we look at a computer screen or a website or anything like that, we can, as sighted people can choose what we want to see, what we want to read, what we want to ignore. Whereas, you know, a person who's relying on a screen reader has to listen to what the screen reader says. And oftentimes Narrator from Microsoft reads the information that you don't want and then doesn't read the information that you do want. So a lot of times people have to supplement that with third-party software. The industry standard is called JAWS. It's from a company called Freedom Scientific. It's very good. It provides lots of keyboard shortcuts for people to navigate menus and things like that. In Allegheny County, all of our libraries have JAWS software. I don't know if all of our librarians and library staff know how to access it and set it up for people, but all of our computers are equipped with JAWS. But JAWS can be very cost prohibitive. For a 2 years license, it's about $800, which if somebody is of working age and JAWS is crucial to their job, OVR, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, a state government agency, may provide JAWS for them or may make the purchase for them. But for other people, we recommend to folks that don't qualify for that, NVDA, that stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access. It's an open source program. It's free of charge, and people can download it on their computer. And it's much better than Microsoft Narrator. It might not be quite to the level of JAWS, but it's, one of our colleagues uses it for gaming and for different things. So it's also an option for libraries if you do want to have accessibility things on your computers. If you don't have the budget of like an Allegheny County, a larger county, to have JAWS and have the industry standard on all the computers, it's an option for you. There's different on-screen magnifying software, and there's also desktop magnifiers that work with a closed circuit television. We have one here in our library, and people also may qualify for them through OVR if it relates to their job. And most of the people that come into our library use it for things like opening their mail, cutting out coupons, things like that. And it magnifies what's under it significantly on a screen. We also had somebody tell us, relay the information that through OVR, they were able to get a desktop magnifier on their house, in their home. And she was an artist, and she was able to continue doing her art despite her vision loss because she could look at that large screen and see her own hand under the magnifier working. So, you know, being that was her livelihood, OVR paid for it, and she was able to continue doing her art. Another software that we have in Allegheny County is an on-screen magnifier called Magic Screen Magnification Software from the same company that makes JAWS, Freedom Scientific, and it's also very expensive. There is an on-screen magnifier from Microsoft on all PCs that we'll show you a little bit later and demo, or you can take a look at it. So as far as reading books go.
Yeah, so some of the stuff that we have here that we also offer is Bard Mobile. You do have to be a member of our service or the General National Library Service, but basically it's kind of like Overdrive in that you download audiobooks to your phone, to your tablet. It's pretty much compatible with any device, Amazon Kindle, and then you can download the audiobook to that, and then you have the book to listen to. It also has Braille on there. It's pretty great. The only difference is you don't have to there's no hold system, so you can just download the book and automatically have it and read it.
Yeah, there's no time limit either. People can keep the books, they can download unlimited. There's not any number of copies. I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with Overdrive.
This is kind of like that, but a little bit simpler in a way, and it has a really huge library. And so a lot of our patrons who may not want a reader like the player that we have that we'll show you here in a minute, they like having books just like right on their phones they can use. And it also is another like kind of form of independence for them to still read books like on the go. You know, I personally like listen to books in my car all the time, and they can do this just like walking down the street, going to work, catching the bus. Another service we have is called Bookshare. Bookshare is also free through our service, and basically it is a site where it has thousands of books. They're both audio, and you can get them in PDF form with images, so people can use like screen readers for them if they would prefer that way. The only thing with Bookshare is that they basically get the PDF file of the book and put it through the computer, so it is a computerized voice. But if there's like a new book that's out that a patron wants, it is most likely already on Bookshare because the company just sends it right to them. So Bookshare has like 700,000 titles or something like that, and it's growing every single day.
And that's a great resource for the academic librarian because for students, Bookshare is free even if the person is not a member of our service.
Yeah.
For everybody else that's not a student, they have to go through us or they have to pay, I think it's like $50 a year or something. It's not a huge amount, but for students and also the resources that they have, being they can scan so many of them, they do have things that are more technical manuals, textbooks, things like that. So it's a great resource for students.
Things that a library might not be able to provide, or I don't know many textbook places that have them for audiobooks. And so Bookshare is a kind of a way to still use that kind of service. And
their website is bookshare.org to get there.
You kind of like that, yeah. And then we have our talking book player, which is very large button, super easy to use for people that have low mobility or have low visual, like maybe they're not completely blind, but they have visual impairments. They can still see the buttons and the contrast between the player itself, which is black, and then the yellow, green, and red buttons and white buttons are really easy for them to use. And a lot of the time we get patrons that call in and they want to sign their mother up, but they're like, she's not tech savvy. I'm like, I promise the player is like the easiest thing to use and we will walk you through it. So we get a lot of people calling in and asking, how do I do this? And how do I do that in the player? And we sit them with the player and they can usually work through it. And they're always very excited when they figure it out. It's really nice.
Before we move on, we do have a question in the chat box.
Oh, sure. What's the question?
Can you say more about the difference between the screen readers that are software versus a screen reader that is CCTV device? Is that not a screen reader as well? How should we refer to a CCTV if we have a freestanding device in our library? Ours happens to convert text to speech as well.
Oh, well, then that I would say that includes that particular one. If it does change text to speech, then it does include screen reading technology. Then it does include screen reader technology. We usually consider ours a magnifier because that's what most of our patrons use it for. I'm actually not sure if ours has the ability to convert text to speech. Most of the people that are in here that use it have some vision. Do you know, Patty, if ours has, or Dawn?
I don't think ours does.
I don't think ours does, but there are ones that have both magnification, and ours also kind of inverts the colors for some people who are visually impaired and need that kind of color switch to be able to.
Yeah, people are colorblind or so forth.
Yeah, but ours unfortunately is not quite up to date, so it doesn't read. It doesn't have that kind of screen reading capability, but there are a lot of different apps as well that also do screen reading.
I've been to conferences where I've seen companies demonstrate, and probably mostly for academic libraries, where you can put you can put a whole book down, and it will actually page by page, it will cycle through it and make it available either as text to speech or in large print or whatever you need. So there are expensive technologies, but if you're in an academic library or a place where you have a lot of students and a lot of need for it, those are worthwhile. There are also handheld scanners that will do text to speech now.
Yeah.
So they're, we don't have one here. They're rather expensive, but I think we should get one of those at some point.
We're continuously trying to add devices to our library. Besides, we have like the iPads and the tablets and the players and braille displays and refreshable braille displays. But we just got Kindles. We have laptops. We're kind of continuously trying to add technology to our library so that we can help any patron that calls in with it.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll be able to get that.
Usually through a grant. A lot of times the LSTA grants allow you to provide things like that.
I just wanted to mention that just yesterday, I was working with a person and they downloaded an app that we did not include in this slide here, but it's called Seeing AI, and then maybe it's one that we can put in at the end. But this app, the person can set it to read like a large document, a small block of text, or just like a consumer good. So she was hovering her phone over a bag of Kit Kat, and it actually read like Kit Kat, assorted pack of white chocolate, dark chocolate, and milk chocolate.
It read one of the things we get from Maine for all of the language classes.
Oh yeah, we gave her a flyer and she scanned it and it read the whole flyer for her. So there are things like that people can even put it on their phone, where it'll take a document and change that to spoken word, change text to word.
I've also seen one that someone had on her iPhone. She's a blind person, a professional that works for the Bureau of Blindness and Visual Services, but she's a colleague of ours. And she was able to hold her phone up and take a picture of one of us. It not only describes you, the general look of your face, your hair color, and your eyes, but it takes a guess at how old you are. And it's yeah.
That's actually it's a pretty good segue into our next part that we're going to be showing people things because you'll be able to see us. But yesterday, this same app does that, the Seeing AI, and the user took a picture of me, and it said a male around 30 years old, looking happy. I was so happy that it gave me 30 years old, because unfortunately the last time it did it gave me more years than I have. I forget. I think it said like 42, approximately 42. Yeah, and then it's for Patty.
I've gotten 27 and then 33. So really random numbers.
Then it also it called you a man one time too.
It called me a man, but that's fine. I was fine with it.
So we warn people, but the technology on that one is pretty amazing, because the person can use their smartphone camera to scan for colors. So if they're looking for a white shirt,
they can kind of scan their closet.
They can scan their wardrobe and it'll tell them orange, yellow, and it does a lot more too. It'll say this is a bus stop sign. This
is a bottle of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much the artificial intelligence works.
We were testing it out, and two of us were just running around the library with iPads, like scanning various items to see what it would read. So
yeah, because it does barcode scanning too.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
So. Okay, now you can see what we look like and see if we resemble what AI. Yeah, I think it's the start video. We might have to minimize.
Oh, we have to do it up on the computer. That's fine.
Yeah,
1 minute.
We're trying to go live here.
Meeting. Down.
Down?
Right there. Meeting.
Ah, there we go.
You can see everything that we have here.
The meeting controls are not quite letting us. Stop video. Do you guys see us?
I see you, but you're small on the top instead of the full screen.
Let's see.
You should be able to stop sharing.
Oh, okay. Hit stop share.
Stop share. Good, right. There we go. Okay, is that better? We can see ourselves now.
Now we can see ourselves. Okay, so we just want to take a brief break from the slideshow to kind of give you an example of different devices that we use here. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to show them this first.
Yeah,
so first, to kind of give an example of the kind of passage of time, this is what a Braille printer used to be. So people would use these different buttons here to type out their Braille. So it's kind of heavy, and it comes in this like massive suitcase. But since then, we have gotten the refreshable Braille displays, which connects to your tablet, your phone via Bluetooth. So we have this one. You can see the size is kind of insanely smaller, and then we have an even smaller one.
Yeah, and these things, you know, if somebody's interacting with a phone or tablet, they connect through Bluetooth.
Yeah.
So this is great for portability and things like that. But when when you're in an office with somebody who's visually impaired, they might have something more like this.
Yeah.
That gives them more options, because you can imagine if you're reading a book or reading a large text document, this will take a long time with it refreshing. And basically, as they go through what's on the screen, as soon as their finger hits the end here, it refreshes, and the next sentence, the next words come right up. And then the input here is exactly the same as that Perkins Brailler right there. It's the same input system, just like we have our QWERTY keyboard. This is the the dots and the points of Braille.
Right. Each of the buttons represents one of the dots in the 6-cell Braille cell. There are 8 buttons on there. 2 of them are used for other information, sort of like the asterisk and the pound sign on your telephone. It's not directly into the 6th Braille cell, but it's actually 2 more. There are scientific notation. There are different systems that are used for mathematics. So it gets pretty complex, but those are all capable of doing it, just that small device.
So this is our player that most of our users do still use. Our demographic does tend to tilt towards older folks. A lot of, and we are working to change that. We do have a lot of younger people. We have a children's specialist that we hired a few years ago. So we are reaching out to new people, but just based on like age-related vision loss and age-related disabilities, a lot of people aren't comfortable with tablets and iPads and phones and things like that, and they do just want our standard player. I'll take this up there and just show you that a lot of people call it a cassette player. This is our cartridge, but if you look into this cartridge, it's a USB drive, but it's made large like this by design so that it's easier for people to handle, and that's why it also has a hole here, and it's very easy to insert it into the player. You know, so people with low mobility issues or shaky hands are able to do so very easily. The buttons are very large, and if I turn it on here. When you turn it on, if you press any button without a cartridge in there, it'll tell you what it does.
You start or stop playing book. Volume up. To increase the volume by 1, rewind. Press this rewind button once to move backward 5 seconds in the book.
Patty and Scott, we seem to have lost you, at least your video. Can you hear us at all? Well, everybody, I apologize. We seem to have lost our hosts. Okay. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording.
Just want to show you voiceover. I know now we're kind of behind in time, but we just wanted to show you voiceover just to get an idea of what it's like. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this over my phone.
You can just hold it. Fine.
Access children's folder, 50 calendar,
So
Thursday.
if you hear the way I'm doing a what they call either the swiping motion or the flicking gesture to go through. And this takes us through each option on the screen. And say if what I want to access is notes, I double tap to open it.
Oh, wow. We're much bigger now.
Wow. So there's different gestures for going forward through options like that. There's also ways to scroll down. So if there's a web page with just a ton of information, and you'd have to spend your time scrolling with us. There's different gestures to scroll through all of that at once and to make it more quick and to skip over information for people as well.
And we included this also in the document that will be sent out after, I think was attached maybe while we were in blackout mode. That also has the Hadley Institute, which is where we started learning how to use accessible tech. Because when we first started here, neither of us had used accessible tech before, nor had we taught anyone how to use it. And we simply watched a couple of those videos, vetted on one-on-one with one of the older RAs, and then we were off to the races and kind of just learned on the job. So it's not a difficult task or a difficult skill to learn. So if we're in any example, like we had no idea how to use VoiceOver, TalkBack, or any of these devices.
It's just like how you come across any technology or reference question in a library. It's the same with accessible tech. Like you don't know it necessarily going into it. Any question can come in the door at any time. And you kind of learn as you go. Like most of the time, I don't necessarily know what we're going to be doing when I'm working with somebody in a training. It's just, here's what I want to be able to accomplish. And we take the basic gestures and then move that on. And those basic gestures can take a while to get to. If you've ever seen somebody who's older learning to use a mouse and learning the muscle memory of moving a mouse on a screen, it takes them a long time and it's very difficult. Of course, for most younger generations, using a mouse is second nature. It's kind of the same thing. Somebody that grew up using a touch screen in a screen reader has a lot easier of a time than somebody who doesn't. They might, instead of doing that swiping motion, they might put their hand here and then do that. And that's a whole different thing. Because if you're actually touching something, it's going to read what's below your finger instead of just like swiping through. That can take a while for people to get.
And what's great is VoiceOver has a bunch of different options for those basic gestures. Some people like to scroll through using that kind of basic
clock,
slide gesture, or some people prefer to have their finger on the screen.
Line square, CL setting, clock, actual
so they can hear the different apps they have. So then it helps them figure out and give an orientation for their screen. So there's a lot of different options for that, and VoiceOver is consistently trying to update and be better, much as iPhones are constantly updating.
Yeah, there's always updates for accessibility, and a lot of times if a person comes in and they're like, my phone isn't working,
it's usually because it needs an update.
That's exactly
and then we
right.
update it and kind of teach them the different new things that accessibility has offered. So it is a little bit rough because it updates kind of a lot, but it's nice because the updates are necessary. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump back into our slideshow here. You only have to do share screen. Oh, can you guys see that? Hang on 1 second. We're going to bring our slideshow back up here and kind of move through the rest of our slides. I just did text right there. Yeah, you're sideways. So. Good. There we go. All right, and so something that is also something we have learned on the job here, let me just got it, is the language of assistive tech. And it's kind of like, if you look at the picture to the left on the screen, it has all of those apps kind of in columns and rows, and you can move through them using the basic gestures. But how would you explain that? You know, how someone who doesn't have a visual cue of what a row and a column and how many in each row are and how many columns there are, you have to be really descriptive about what's on the screen. but also using the language that they can understand. Because if they've never seen something, it's like describing what the letter A looks like to someone who's never been able to see. So a lot of the time we have to kind of readjust how we're talking about accessible tech with different patrons, because they might not know what something like what scrolling is. You know, they haven't spent like hours scrolling through Facebook in the morning or through Instagram, so they don't really know what the scroll is. So then a scroll is parchment on a scroll, or kind of like a scroll and Rolodex sometimes. So it's trying to make sure that we're using that language. And something a little different is to the right. You see on the left-hand side where it says settings, there's all these different headings for your, Bluetooth, notifications, general. So if we were going to try and kind of guide them into the general settings to turn on accessibility or to turn on a different kind of accessibility, those headings are also activate. So you go through, you hit general, and then it opens up another screen. But then when you go to the next page here, it says accessibility, these headings don't actually activate anything. The activation keys are below that. So trying to find like kind of the different ways to explain those. And a lot of the time we will ask the patron ahead of time if we have a one-on-one with them, what would you like to work on that day, and what through that session would you like to do? And then we can kind of research. And a lot of the time I also kind of go through it myself before I meet them, just so I have a better idea of what language to use when describing it, because that can also be a big thing.
Sure that they're still hearing us.
Can you guys still hear us? Hello?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Oh, just making sure.
Never used my phone as a conference phone before. Okay, so these things, and you can use them in your own library. That previous slide was actually on the settings page in an iPad. That's how you turn on VoiceOver in the iPad. You turn it on in there. You can set a shortcut to press the home button 3 times to turn on VoiceOver, and you don't have to worry about it getting stuck in VoiceOver. A lot of times, that's a worry of people. I don't want to demonstrate that on my phone or on an iPad because I don't want it to get stuck and not be able to get it off. It's very easy to turn it off, and it's something that's good to know how to do. So, if you have iPads that are available to your patrons, please just familiarize yourself with going into the settings and turning on VoiceOver, because it's very easy and it can make a world of difference to them.
And TalkBack, Android's version is called TalkBack. It's also Voice View and Voice Stream, I think. It's a new
depending on the manufacturer.
Yeah. So, and the gestures are the same. So the Hadley Institute that is included in the document that we sent you, where it has the videos to describe VoiceOver and basic gestures, those can kind of be adapted to all the different kinds of voice screen readers that there are, because even Kindle has a different one as well. I think that one's the one that's called like Voice View. And so using kind of VoiceOver as like a base, TalkBack and all kinds of Kindle devices, Android devices, they all have it's all the same kind of gesture, which is really nice. So if you kind of familiarize yourself with VoiceOver, the kind of the best one, I guess, out of the 3, then you'll still be able to use things like the Android tablets, Android phones, or even Kindle tablets.
Okay, so if you have PCs in your libraries, it's very easy to access the accessibility features that are included with them. To launch the Ease of Access Center, which is what Windows calls their accessibility settings, press the Windows button and and there's a lot of different settings, more than just the screen reader, which they call narrator, or the magnifier. There's a lot of them that have shortcuts, but there's things about mouth sensitivity, there's closed captions, there's a lot of different options that are there. But just to give you a quick example of one of their shortcuts, why doesn't everybody go ahead and press the Windows button, everybody that's on a PC that is, press the Windows button and the plus sign, and just see what happens.
You did this to my computer once.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Now, to get out of that, if you did it, press the Windows button and the minus sign, and then you can click on that little opaque magnifying glass icon, and it'll get rid of the magnifier altogether. But that's something that, if you notice somebody, if you're in a library and you notice somebody is sitting very, very close to the computer screen because they're struggling to read something, you can go up and use that little trick. The one from Microsoft isn't the best either because it does tend to distort text after a certain amount of magnification. But for some basic things, it's pretty good. And all of these things are available on the PCs that you have. So, messing around with them, just becoming familiar with them, and don't worry, they are easy to turn off. And if you can't turn it off, you can Google how to do it. It's all there. So you won't be able. That was my fear too. Like, I can't get this turned off, but it's easy to do, and you can do all this in your library. Our computer's frozen.
Go down left. Right there. So just go over to the right one. There, down. Oh, there you go. Got it. So, and we talked about these before. JAWS, which is in Allegheny County, all the libraries do have this on their computers. If you don't, it kind of costs a lot. So then you can use things like NVDA, which is free and open source. It's a little bit better than Microsoft Narrator, but it's not quite as expensive as JAWS, which could be a good thing if someone's not super tech savvy. They can kind of use NVDA at a local library, and there's nothing to lose by installing it on your computer. It's only going to help more patrons. And then we have the Magic Screen Enlargement software, which is also available on Allegheny County computers, libraries. But that one also, if you're kind of trying to buy it as at your own home, that one will also have a price to it.
We're trying to rush through this since we lost all that time in the power outage.
We mentioned before some of the different agencies that we refer people to, and these are just a few of them. Lots of acronyms. Bear with us. BBRS, which basically helps people who are blind and visually impaired, or both deaf and blind, learn how to become more independent. So that's like cooking, how to get on the bus, getting dressed. BBVS offers a lot of vocational help for people who want to work that are visually impaired. So finding employment, counseling, also setting up a bus pass, independent living skills. They also have children's resources. OVR is, we've mentioned it a couple times, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation provides services to help people with different disabilities prepare and obtain and maintain employment. So they also have counseling. They have equipment. So let's say you need a wheelchair to get to your job. They can provide that for you.
Or hearing aids, all kinds of assistive equipment. If
you're ever unsure of where to send someone as far as what agency for them to use, let's say they're in Berks County, you can go to PA Association for the Blind, which is pablind.org. It comes up with a map of Pennsylvania, and all of the counties are separated out, and you just click on the county that you need, and it gives you a list of all the different agencies that are for visually impaired and or blind people to kind of reference them. So if you go to PA Association for the Blind, and then you go to our Allegheny County, it lists BBRS, which is pretty great, because then it gives you a couple. It'll give you a name, a number, a website. It'll give you all the information that you need.
I know it's kind of after 12 o'clock now. We wanted to put our contact information up here. We'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Any tech-related questions, any outreach questions. Don is great at outreach. He goes to libraries all over the state. He gets people signed up for the service. You all know that you have the power to sign people up for the service too.
Yeah, we can get you guys signed up. Just email any one of us. Any of the emails that are on the screen. Please feel free to email us. Just email us your information, and we can get you guys signed up for BARD, for our newsletter, just so you're kind of aware of what we're up to, the different programs we're offering. So we can send you a player and some books, and you can kind of use those as examples of look at all these different resources that are available to you if a patron comes in that needs it.
I know we're kind of pushing on the time limit here, but we'd be happy to answer some questions.
Any questions?
So while people type, hopefully we have some questions. I just want to make sure to thank Scott and Patty and Dawn for joining us today. And I'd like to thank everybody else for joining us. Erin did put the evaluation form in the chat box. You should, I believe, also be getting that through email as well. So for those of you who are in those rooms with multiple people, if you could just make sure everyone gets it. And we really do appreciate your feedback because it helps us determine which direction to take our programming.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for being so patient with our very random power outage.
That literally was just not even planned at all. I have no idea how that.
That's the first time since I've been working here that the power's gone out, and it would have been at the worst moment.
Literally the first time ever that either of us have seen the power go out here. So that was a fun pause, though.
So I'm seeing some thank yous. Does anyone have any questions? And you might still be typing them too, I realize.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
we
thank you
appreciate
all
all
for
the thank yous and all the patience. Thank you so much.
And please, anytime if a question comes up later, we love talking to people here. We love referring people, helping people. Keep our contact information, if nothing else. Yeah.
Or email us, whatever you need, whichever is easier.
Yeah. Lots more thank yous.
Yeah.
This is Erin. I'm going to stop recording now, but I also wanted to say thank you for doing the session today.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for inviting us, and we do apologize for the technical problems.